Mr. Small by Roger Hargreaves. Mr. Small was very small. Probably the smallest person you've ever seen in your whole life, and or perhaps the smallest person you've ever seen in your whole life. He was so small, you probably wouldn't see him anyway. Mr. Small was about as big as a pin, which isn't very big at all. Perhaps we should say that Mr. Small was as small as a pin. Mr. Small lived in a small house underneath a daisy at the bottom of Mr. Small Robinson's house. It is a very nice house, although very tiny, and it suited Mr. Small very well indeed. He liked living there. Now, this story is all about the time Mr. Small decided to get a job. The trouble was, what sort of job could Mr. Small do? After all, there aren't that any small jobs. Mr. Small had thought about it for a long time, but hadn't any ideas. Not one. He was thinking about it now. While he was having lunch, he was eating half a pea, 1 crumb, and a drop of lemonade. Mr. Small thought while he was eating his big lunch, but it was no use. Thinking just made him extremely thirsty, so he had to drop of lemonade. Oh no, he thought to himself, after lunch I'll go and see Mr. Robinson at his advice. So after lunch, he left his house and walked to Mr. Robinson's house at the top of the garden. I can't do a Mr. Small impression, because he's squeaky. And actually, I do a great impression on his deeper voice in the 2008 counterpart. He just has catchphrases. Grant McGillicuddy, I say good tidings, Eddie Gads. It's disgusting. It was quite a long walk for something like Mr. Small. And after that, he just stopped for rest. He sat up and feeling after quite a breath. I can't do a Mickey Mouse voice because it's funny. Because it stinks. A worm crawled by and stopped. Good afternoon, Mr. Small, said the worm. Good afternoon, Walter, said Mr. Small in the room, who he knew quite well. Out for a walk are you? Asked Walter. Going to see Mr. Robinson, replied Mr. Small. Oh, said the doctor. About a job, added Mr. Small. Oh, said Walter the worm again, and crawled off. Walter was a worm, a very few words. After he rested for a while, Mr. Small set up again and walked off the rest of the way from Mr. Robinson's house without stopping once. When he got there, he climbed up the steps to Mr. Robinson's back door. He knocked at the door. No one heard him. He knocked again at the door. Nobody heard him. The trouble was, if you're as small as Mr. Small, you don't have a very loud knock. Mr. Small looked up. There, high above his head, was a doorbell. How come I ring the bell when I can't reach it? Thought Mr. Small to himself. He started to climb the wall brick by brick to reach the bell. He had climbed up 4 bricks when he made a mistake of looking at him. Down. Oh dear, he said it fell. Bang! Ouch! Said Mr. Small, rubbing his head. Just then, Mr. Small heard of steps. It was the postman. It was the postman. The postman came to the door, posted his letters, and just suddenly he heard a voice. Hello, said the voice. The postman looked down. Hello, he said to Mr. Small. Who are you? I'm Mr. Small, said Mr. Small. Will you ring the bell for me, please? Of course I will, replied the postman in answer to Mr. Small's question, and reaching out the press door with his finger. Thank you, said Mr. Small. My pleasure, said the postman. Off he went. Mr. Small heard the doorstep scared the door. The door opened. Mr. Robinson opened the door and looked out. That's funny, he said. I sure heard somebody ring the bell. He's about to shut the door when he heard the little voice. Hello, said the voice. Hello, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Robinson looked down. Hello, he said. What are you doing here? I've come to ask your advice, said Mr. Small to Mr. Robinson. Well, said Mr. Robinson, you better come in and have a talk. Mr. Small thought Mr. Robinson to the house and perched on the arm of Mr. Robinson's favorite chair. He told him about the think of job that he could do. Mr. Robinson sipped a cup of tea and listened. So you see, Mr. Small explained how difficult it is. Yes, I can see that, said Mr. Robinson. Believe that to me. Mr. Robinson knew a lot of people. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked in a restaurant and arranged for Mr. Small to work there, putting mustard in mustard faults. But Mr. Small kept falling into the mustard cabinet, so he left that fuck. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked in a sweet shop and arranged for Mr. Small to work there, serving sweets. But Mr. Small kept falling into the candy jar, so he let that job. Candy's probably delicious for Mr. Small because he kind of likes this catchphrase, giggling gumballs. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked in a place and they made matches, and arranged for Mr. Small to work there, putting matches into boxes. But Mr. Small kept getting shot in the boxes with the matches, so he left that job. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked at a farm and arranged for Mr. Small to work there, sorting out the brown eggs for the white eggs. But Mr. Small kept getting trying by the eggs, so he left that job. What are you gonna do with you? Mr. Robinson asked Mr. Small one morning. Don't know, said Mr. Small in a small voice. I've got one idea. I know, said Mr. Robinson, I know somebody who writes children's books. Perhaps you can work for him. So the following day, Mr. Robinson took Mr. Small to meet the man who wrote children's books. Can I work for you? Mr. Small asked the man. Yes, you can, replied the man. Pass me that pencil and tell me what the jobs you've been doing. Then I'll write a book about it. I'll call it Mr. Small, he added. But children won't want to hear a story all about me, exclaimed Mr. Small. Yes, they will, replied the man, and they'll like it very much. And you did, didn't you? God. No boy, that Motherful Pussycat. Can someone fix my eyes? I don't have a pencil to write with. Oh, don't worry, boss. I'll get the stuff. Okay. But it's not complete, so you get crack and something out the mouth. Okay, get the cloud. Did somebody get the iCloud stuff? But because that phone isn't connected to the internet, but I'd like a piece of. Oh no! Just do whatever, stick. That's so funny. That's like stuff. Oh, fuck.